Hello, Movie Mavens. Welcome back to another video on the B Movies channel. My name is Bailey, and I put the B in movies. For our first October video, I am giving you some samurai realness from The Ring. I just did my photo shoot for my 13 days of costumes with this one as well. Cracked myself up. Very happy with how this turned out. And so happy to share it with you today. So to go ahead and jump in, I'm going to give a content and trigger warning up top for today's episode. We will be talking about the substance, and in talking about the substance, there will be mentions of EDs, SI, extreme body horror, and gore. I will link some resources in the description box below, but just a heads up, I will also give you a little note timestamp so that you know where to skip to, but I just want to give that warning up top so that you were aware. So to go ahead and jump into today's Bailey Babble, first things first, I have a couple things to babble about. First thing up, I want to make an announcement that it's a maybe announcement, but just work with me. There is a lot of content coming out this month, and there's a lot of really good content that I really want to talk about with you and share with you when it's as relevant as possible. So, quickly after it comes out. So I want to give you all a heads up now that there may be, for October, videos may be coming out on Sundays, just because I want to have enough time to watch this content so I can share my thoughts with all of you, so we can throw it into bite-sized Sundays so we can write reviews on it. Because again, this is clearly my favorite time of the year, you know this. And so I want us to be able to talk about things in real time and not get a week behind. That's why we stopped recording so much in advance, right? And so we'll always let you know on Instagram, but I just wanted to give you a heads up now that with all of the great content coming out, we may be doing videos on Sundays, but the good news is they will probably be pretty beefy videos. So just, if you're not following us over on Instagram, which is at bmovies channel, it's always linked in the description box below as well. Be sure to follow us so that you can keep up with if the video schedule moves like today. Secondly, I want to talk about Blockbuster for a second, because their website has had that message up for a hot minute, right? And so I'm just curious what y'all think they're up to. Do you think that we're going to see a physical comeback of Blockbuster since video stores are, becoming few and far between? Do you think they're going to release some sort of streaming service? I'm just curious what y'all are up to, because I saw something that mentioned it again about the please be kind while we rewind messaging. So I just wanted to throw that out up top as well, because that popped into my head. And then the third thing is my usual thing of I hope you're having a good week. My week has been crazy busy, but it's been a good week. I also did something this morning that was out of my comfort zone. So just a reminder that sometimes you've got to step out of your comfort zone. You got to do things. Sometimes it pays off. Sometimes it doesn't. But just a friendly reminder, because I did something this morning, that I'm still kind of thinking about. So just a friendly reminder to step outside of your comfort zone, and what better month to do it in than the month of October, which is the best, in my opinion, time of the year. So, we have a lot to talk about today, if that was not obvious by everything that I announced in the Bailey Babbles. So let's go ahead and jump right in to this week's blog roundup. And so as a reminder, if you're new to the channel, the B Movies channel is an extenuation of the B Movies blog that I run with my friend Elliot, who is my editor, my collaborator, my partner in crime. And so for the month of October, we are actually releasing 6 blogs a week. So Monday through Saturday at around 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, you can expect a new blog from us through November 2nd. Since Halloween falls on a Thursday, I wanted to go ahead and do it through that weekend. So technically you're getting an extra weekend, but I just wanted to make sure that October got its flowers. And so all of our blogs can be found on just bmovies.blog, which, like everything, is always in the description box below. So this week over on the B Movies blog, on Monday, we talked about the substance, which we will get into because I will never stop talking about the substance. On Tuesday, we did another edition of I've Got Something to Add, which is a Halloween edition where I talk about these commercials that I loved growing up that kind of live in my head rent-free for Halloween. On Wednesday, we did another edition of A Girl Can Stream, which is where I come up with fake streamer categories that I think should exist. You know, like, for example, movies where Mandy Moore loves Christian rock, horror movies with butt demons, things like that. On Thursday, we talked about clown horror. Since Terrifier 3 is going to be released next week, I thought it would be fun to talk about clown horror a little bit because it is a weird little subgenre. On Friday, we did a spotlight on Jordan Peele. I thought who better to start off our October spotlights than one of my favorite modern horror directors. And then finally, and we're going to talk about this as well, yesterday we talked about the new Salem's Lot, and I hated it. So we'll get into it in a little bit, but I was not a fan. So this week over on the B-Movies blog, just to recap, you got a review for The Substance. I've got something to add, Halloween edition, A Girl Can Stream, clown horror, Jordan Peele spotlight, and the Salem's Lot review. And all of these pieces are also linked in the description box below, so you can definitely check them out. So next up we have our Bite Size Sunday, and since we're releasing this on Sunday, usually over here on YouTube you get an exclusive teaser, but I'm just going to go ahead and tell you what it is today. These Bite Size Sundays are little tiny reviews that live over on our Instagram, which is just at bmovies channel. Again, same as our YouTube. So definitely give us a follow over there because those don't get posted anywhere but on Instagram. And those are usually posted Sunday morning around 8 or 9 a.m. CT. So this week's Bite Size Sunday is on It's What's Inside. I actually really liked this movie. My criticisms are very small. I think it's super unique. I think it's a really cool little flick. But I do have a couple criticisms that, again, we'll talk about this in Salem's Lot, but it's basically, my criticisms are some of my normal criticisms of, we know someone's ignorant or we know someone's a bad guy. We don't have to have them say horrible things. There are other ways to portray that and to get that point across. So definitely check that out over on, again, at bmovies channel, same as our YouTube, and our Instagram is always in the description box below. So now that we've gotten the housekeeping out of the way, let's go ahead and get into today's deep dive. So so I'm going to kind of do something a little bit different today because we are going to talk about two pieces, but I'm going to put The Substance in today's deep dive, and then we'll talk about Salem's Lot later, just because The Substance comes with some content warnings and trigger warnings. So if you have any sort of triggers or it's uncomfortable for you to read about eating disorders, please go ahead and skip to the timestamp here. And so that's why I'm splitting these up. So if you're wondering why, like, well, they're technically both pieces, they should both be in the deep dive, you are correct. It's just with the trigger warnings for this piece and what we're about to talk about, I just wanted to split them up. So, again, skip to that timestamp that I showed earlier, and let's go ahead and dive into The Substance. So, The Substance did not live up to my expectations. It exceeded them tenfold. Not only is this movie one of my favorite horror movies of the year, it's one of my favorite movies that I've seen this year, period. Demi Moore's performance is at an all-time high, and we get to see her like we've never seen her before. Don't take that comment lightly. Truly, like we've never seen her before. But before we get into it, let's back up. If you are not familiar with The Substance, which I feel like a lot of you probably are, but some people might not be, and that's okay. Let me give you a quick rundown. So, Elizabeth Sparkle, who's played by Demi Moore, is a 50-year-old celebrity who is being phased out of her own fitness show because of the ridiculous beauty standards and ageism of Hollywood. Like, if you see Demi Moore, she's gorgeous. She's a gorgeous woman. Like, it's so goofy. Anyway, so in an attempt to kind of keep everything that she's worked so hard for and regain her self-confidence, she tries a mysterious drug known only as The Substance to unlock a younger version of herself who's played by Margaret Qualley. Now, The Substance really could have fumbled the ball here. And that was honestly my biggest concern going in. I wasn't looking for another movie that basically said, like, everything works out for you if you're young and hot. However, I can safely assure you that The Substance seems to be, like, vehemently against this mentality and this messaging. And so I'm going to try to keep my review as spoiler-free as possible because I went in pretty blind, and I think you should too. So, as someone who has been in recovery for eating disorders for a few years, one thing that really stuck out to me about The Substance was the focus on EDs. I will be very honest, I struggled with anorexia and workout bulimia throughout my teens and my early 20s. And if you've ever struggled, please know, like, I see you, I hear you, I will link resources below, like, if you're ready to talk, when you're ready to talk. There will be some resources for, like, the National Eating. That's what, for those who are not aware, I don't know if you can see, but this is the NIDA, like, it's hard to do this mirrored, but, like, this is the NIDA symbol, if you've ever wondered what that is, because you never cure or beat eating disorders, but I've been in recovery for several years. So again, like, whenever you're ready to talk, I'm gonna link some resources below. And throughout The Substance, we either don't see Elizabeth eat or she binge eats. Additionally, very early on in the film, she throws up because she had only been drinking. There are several scenes throughout, like when she's meeting with Harvey, who's played by Dennis Quaid, at a restaurant. There's, like, close-ups of him binge eating, and it's almost portrayed in, like, a grotesque light. And I believe that we can infer that Elizabeth has bulimia, and that's why we only see her binge eating. She also teaches aerobics classes. Another symptom of bulimia is, like, extreme exercise or an extreme focus on fitness. I also believe that, like, some of the side effects from The Substance are meant to reflect the dangerous consequences of long-term eating disorders, such as hair loss, tooth decay, substance abuse, which in this case is literally an abuse of the substance, brittle nails, osteoporosis, calcium deposits. There are all sorts of things that you can develop when you have eating disorders long term. And many of these complications mirror what happens to Elizabeth when Sue doesn't switch back with her. And, like, for example, there's a scene where Sue pulls, like, this chicken wing out of her belly button, which, like, is a real thing that happens in this film. And it could be perceived in a couple of ways. Like, either it represents a physical manifestation of Elizabeth's binging and purging, or it represents this physical manifestation of how Elizabeth believes if she eats, she will gain weight. I would also like to call out that there's a line from the phone operator. I have no clue what to call this person. It's the person that she calls into. It's like tech support for The Substance, basically. And at one point, he tells Elizabeth that essentially any damage done to her by, like, Sue's negligence can't be undone, which aligns with some of the more complications that I mentioned from EDs. Like, once you've done so much damage to your body, it can't be fixed. However, The Substance doesn't just stop there. It tackles the subjects of, like, ageism, sexism, the impossible beauty standards placed on women and femme-presenting peeps, the self-consciousness that we all face, and everything in between. And it also takes female rage to a primal level, and I'm here for it. Additionally, like, these messages are so powerful and portrayed in such a powerful way that there were times that, like, there were lines that hit me so hard, I was rolling my eyes in the movie theater because I'm like, I feel that in my soul. The Substance is also funny. Like, it's uncomfortably and darkly funny, but it's still funny. So, like, the TLDR is this movie freaking rules. But it is gnarly. Like, I do have to warn you, it's gnarly. And for someone like me who watches horror like it's job, like it's my job, and, like, I guess technically it kind of is because, I run bmovies, so I guess in a way it kind of is. I will say it wasn't quite as bad as I thought it was going to be. Like, it's grotesque, 100%. But, like, as someone who's seen their fair share of Brian Usna, or like Henenlotter, I wasn't as disgusted or revolted as the people sitting next to me. Like, I'll put it like that. Like, if you've watched Society and, like, made it through the shunting scene, I think you can handle the substance. Like, that's how I'll put it. You know, if you can handle, like, guts and gore and, like, really good practical effects, again, like I said, like, in the way of, like, Brian Usna and, like, other really body horror-centric directors, I think you'll be okay. And, like, I believe the director is French. Like, if you're familiar with a lot of French horror, you know that the French tend to go, like, hard. And that's what this does. So, I highly recommend if you can handle it. And again, like, that's why I wanted to talk about it tackling EDs. Because there are scenes in here that could definitely be triggering to people. If those aren't triggers for you, if you're okay with body horror, I highly recommend this. And just, again, please know you aren't alone, and there are some ED resources linked below. I love you, and if this movie's not triggering, can't recommend going to see it enough. So next up, let's go ahead and get into today's special features, because we have a lot to talk about, and I'm so excited. Again, this is why I waited to release this video until today, because there was so much I wanted to talk about with all of you. So first up, let's talk about Salem's Lot 2024. And so, look, I'm always going to be a bit of a harsh critic when it comes to, like, Stephen King film adaptations. I famously hate Dr. Sleep. And, like, I know people who it was in, like, their top horror for 2019. I hated it because it made really weird changes from the book. And it's even worse because Salem's Lot is my favorite Stephen King novel. Like, hands down, no contest. So I went in hoping that, like, maybe, just maybe, this movie was stuck in development hell and didn't get a theatrical release because, like, of red tape. But deep down, I saw the writing on the wall and knew that it probably wasn't going to be good and it had been, like, recut and reshot into oblivion. And unfortunately, my gut was right on this one. So before we get started, let me give one of my trademark disclaimers of, like, the great thing about movies is we can discuss and debate them. Just because I think a movie is great doesn't make it a good movie. And just because I think a movie is awful doesn't make it a bad movie. Making a movie is an extremely difficult process. It's really badass. And I don't want to detract from that in any way. So, as a disclaimer, and y'all already, by now you should know if I throw out that disclaimer, it means I hated it. And I did not like Salem's Lot at all. So, do I think it's unwatchable? Not necessarily. But do I think that, like, the weird CGI choices, like glowing crosses and, like, weird performances, like how Pilu Asbiak, I think is how you say his last name. Y'all know I'm horrible with names the minute I get on camera. His decision to play, like, Stryker like he's Nick Cage in Renfield and just chewing up any piece of scenery he can put on his mouth. Do I think those things do it any favors? No, I do not. Additionally, to invoke another one of my battle cries, they need to pick a lane. There are times when Salem's Lot, like, swerves into comedy horror's lane, which I don't agree with. I think Salem's Lot needs to be a straight horror film. But if we wanted it to be horror comedy, we needed to lean into that. Because it's a little jarring to have, like, these comedic relief moments out of nowhere. So that's what I think about that. I think we need to pick a lane. As I mentioned earlier, it's clear to me that this movie was poked and prodded. I would personally love to see, like, the original cut, but to me, it's very clear this movie, like, there were too many cooks in the kitchen for this film. And, like, I know that Salem's Lot is, like, 440 pages long. So you're gonna have to cut some stuff. You're gonna have to pick up the pace. But the pacing in this movie is wild because we go from, like, Ben Mears arriving to vampires in, like, 15 minutes. And I think we need to spread it out more. I think that the pacing's wild. And then to invoke another one of my battle cries, so the third one in this video, I think this would have worked better as a series. Like, I can't help, and I've seen other people say this as well, I can't help but think about how well Mike Flanagan's Midnight Mass worked, because it was a series. He was able to build tension. He was able to let the vampirism seep slowly throughout the town. And I think that Mike Flanagan could make one heck of a Salem's Lot reboot, but I also don't want him to get stuck and people see him as like a one-trick pony. But like, I can't help but compare this to like something like Midnight Mass, which I love, right? And it invokes like the spirit of Salem's Lot really well. So for now, the 1979 miniseries adaptation still reigns supreme for me. I do think that if the source material was placed in the right hands, it could be usurped one day as my favorite. But, like, please don't take this as an invitation to make another, like, just another adaptation of Salem's Lot for the heck of it. I don't know if my little heart could take it, and I have a bad knee and don't drive, so I can't curl myself up in a trunk to, like, not get, blasted by the sun if Barlow decided to change me. So, like, TLDR, I was not a fan. Again, always, like I tell y'all, watch things for yourself, form your own opinions, but that's just me personally. I was not a fan of it. So next up, because again, we have a packed special features section. I'm so excited. So next up, we have a new Midwest Angelica video called Paradise. And so this video starts out with just video footage from someone who identifies himself as Marcus Lucan. And he's a journalist. I believe he says an amateur journalist. And just to establish the timeline, this video is from June 2nd, 1999. So he claims he saw something weird on a news station. And we can assume he's referring to what we saw in Pause. And he's headed to Paradise, Missouri to try to find some answers. We get, like, some interstitial shots of, like, Marcus's road trip, and then his narration continues when he reaches Paradise, and he says that he's going to try to find the lake that he saw in the broadcast. So he finds the lake, and this entire time he's just noting how quiet everything is, because it really is. There's not even, like, diegetic noises. And that's when he runs into one of our AZ alien life forms just hovering in the air. It's wild. And so he confirms that that's what he saw on the news was this thing. So then he continues exploring, and we see like this red, almost blood viscous substance in the water, and we can infer, and Marcus infers as well, that the aliens have tainted the water supply. So he continues, again, exploring this town, and he sees something in the window, which I'm going to assume is like maybe an assimilated person. I didn't see what he saw, but something frightens him, and he takes off running. Then we see he's back on the road in his car, and he says he no longer feels comfortable here and needs to find somewhere to stay. So he settles on a nearby hotel. However, we're quickly shown that Marcus was correct, and what we saw was correct, that the water supply is tainted, because when he turns on the water, it's red. It initially runs red. So he's tuckered out, he's gonna go to sleep, and so he sets up his camera to record as he sleeps. And so at first, everything seems fine, but after a bit, some sort of alien life form creature appears. It's glowing. To me, the comparison that I thought of was kind of, think like Dr. Manhattan from Watchmen. And this creature appears in his doorway. It's almost like angelic-like, but it was giving to me big Dr. Manhattan vibes. So the next morning, Marcus gets up. He tells us that he hasn't looked at the footage yet. He has a weird dream that he can't remember. But he just feels rejuvenated, like he's gotten a second wind, which we can assume is something from like this creature, right? And so Marcus rejoins us after lunch and begins to tell us that he can't explain what he saw yesterday. He's like, maybe it was a hallucination, the thing that he saw over the lake. But then, shortly after, Marcus pulls over and we see one of the biggest alien life forms that we've seen so far in the series. This thing is massive. It's like the one that sprouts out in one of the earlier videos. It's the found footage on the farm. It's big. It's big, but it's also standing on four. It almost reminds me of a tauntaun from Star Wars, is kind of the best comparison that I have. So he then tells us, like, I need to go back to the lake that he visited at the beginning of the road trip. So he goes back to the lake, and we see that, I've kind of, in my head, it's become synonymous with Midwest Angelica, that pink and orange sunset background. And we see that creature again. And then Marcus starts trekking through the woods. And the further he goes into the woods, the more the camera begins to glitch, until we see that same Dr. Manhattan life form again. And he informs us that he can only see it through the camera. That, like, he's not seeing it with his naked eye. That it's just the camera. So that explains why the camera's glitching. So he finally reaches what we can assume is one of the AZs. And this thing is nasty. And he makes a comment that, like, this thing was calling me here. Like, that's what's been, like, calling me here this whole time. Like, he just kind of knew. He somehow knew that this was it. And so we get an up-close shot of this thing, and it's, like, pulsating and squelching, and it's just nasty. Like I said, it's just nasty. And he begins exploring more, and then he finds what it appears to be, like, something, like a person that's been, like, assimilated, like, into this creature, like we've seen in previous videos, and it asks him for help. And so I'm going to say something maybe controversial. This is one of my favorite videos in the Midwest Angelica series so far. I love this video. This, to me, could be a standalone horror short with a little tweaking. Again, y'all continue to impress me. Shout out to the team that does Midwest Angelica. With each video, y'all just impress me more. So just big shout out to y'all. This is one of my favorites. And yeah, I can't wait to find out what this glowing life form thing is. I'm really intrigued by it. So next up, we have a new Vermis Malum video called is it Ex Nihilo or Ex Nihilo? Nihilo? Anyway, it means from or out of nothing. So just, like, keep that in mind when we're talking about this video. So the video starts with the cartoon version of Peter Rabbit that I know I watched growing up. And it's where Peter gets trapped, and it talks about, you know, like, how no matter how hard he tries, he gets trapped further and further, and he, you know, his situation just deepens, which is a parallel to what's happening with Lawrence with this video, right? He's just going deeper and deeper into this game. So the video eventually glitches, and we cut to one of Lawrence's vlogs. And Lawrence is showing who we can assume is his estranged partner, foliage of a park they used to go to, tells her they still have the Santa Claus plant, tells her the days are getting shorter. It's just small talk. It's just cuts of things around town, like graffiti on a building, a cat, just little cuts. So then we end the vlog by Lawrence saying that he keeps having that dream. And so the next thing we see is Lawrence going to play Ring 5 in Vermis Malum, which, for those who are following along with the Dante's Inferno story, this is the level where with the river Styx, and it's meant for wrath, is level 5. So, like, just if you're following along with me at home, that's what this level is. So we jump in that same creepy let the sunshine in elevator and get going. And Lawrence first encounters this creature called a borealis grub, which is, like, basically described as, like, this orphan creature who's just kind of in this cryogenic sleep until it can be born, which is wild. Lawrence stabs it with, like, this trident pitchfork thingy, and the screen freezes before we get the image of someone with their hands over their face in the background, and then we get our whistle. We find ourselves then in some sort of, like, beehive type situation where we encounter a character called Mother Ace, who appears to be kind of like a nurse queen bee type thing. And she tells us that it's fine we're late, that we won the game. And then she, like, asks in a really passive-aggressive way, like, what makes us think we're special, because most players don't get that far. And she's like, oh, I'm kidding. But, like, it's clear that she's being really passive-aggressive. And she, like, proceeds to tell us that there are some arts and crafts stations. She tells us that she'll check in on us shortly. And so Lawrence starts to explain like these areas that Mother Ace had described, and starts playing what is really similar to like an old painting game that we'd have back in the day, like on Windows 95, where it's just like the little color palettes and squares, very, very primitive, software. And so he draws a stick figure with a smiley face as like the soothing music plays in the background. And there's a little pop-up where it's like, how did this drawing make you feel? And he enters good. And then we go over, there's like a begonia, and there's like a little mini game to feed the begonia. And once we finish that mini game, an invitation flashes on the screen for like some sort of Lonely Hearts dance in 2014, which again, I think this and the image of someone doing this lends themselves to my theory that like this is stuff from Lawrence's real world seeping into the game. But I digress. That's just my theory. And then Lawrence begins like clicking through this gallery of images from other players in the game, or like who we can assume to be Arthur. And like all of them are normal little doodles. But then there's this one weird doodle of like this big creature, kind of this like big humanoid creature kneeling while holding a smaller human like this, like around the waist. And it's just like, it just seems odd and out of place. And then the game seems to glitch and close itself out and takes him to some sort of like doomsday site, like think the Heaven's Gate website. And all of the numbers are at 0. And then when Lawrence tries to click anything, all he gets are 404s, except for one page that talks about some sort of radio hijacking incident from 1999. And so he winds up going back into the begonia mini game. And then again, there's like this weird email thread that pops up between two people named Conrad Church and Jordan Zwirling, who seem to be talking about some sort of paperwork. I think it has to do with real estate, because the subject message was something about real estate. And then we return back to the painting game, where that weird picture in the gallery of the bigger humanoid figure holding up the human is actually up on the easel. And Lawrence is like, okay, like the game's clearly not over. Like, like he kind of sees through Mother Ace's lies about the game being over. And so he hits a control for an alarm clock to, like kind of wake up. And that's when we're taken to a real version of the room we were in, where everything becomes gray, and we're in some sort of hospital bed, and we can only see like our feet, and our feet, it's clear, are like kind of decayed, and everything just shifts. She tells us basically that like everyone is unalived, we won, just a bunch of creepy stuff. We also see Mother Ace's true form, and she goes from like this cute, like little 1950s cartoon to like this really gross bee creature. And we also get our familiar Vermis Malum whistle in the background in between parts of her monologue. Then we go to a screen that's like made up of binary code that makes like a crackling and squelching noise that we seem to stab again with that same pitchfork or trident from beginning of the video. And then we get a weird screen that's like a purple head that has green teeth, and then the Vermis Malum logo where its eyes should be, with like a weird message that like, basically we were like punked by like some sort of group. And then the video ends with our signature whistle and like a few coded characters. And so, in my opinion, this is the most abstract video in the series thus far, but it still piqued my interest. I still think my Dante's Inferno video is right, and I do like the slow burn of the story, but I'm really intrigued because I think we're getting close to finding something out. Like, I feel like, because we learned in the last video, like, there was some sort of unalive event that caused the estrangement between Lawrence and his partner. And so I do think we're getting there. And that's why I think some of these clues are alluding to that. So be sure to subscribe to the Remus Malum channel if you haven't. And as always, like, everything will be linked below for all of the channels we talk about here. So be sure to subscribe and watch their videos because these creators are good. So next up, I want to talk about House of Spoils really quick, which came out on Friday on Prime. It's a Blumhouse movie. So I will say I would not watch the trailer for this one because I feel like the trailer made this movie look really bad. But I honestly enjoyed it. Like, there's witches, there are feminist themes in it, there are chefs. It's not like a revolutionary horror movie, but I'd recommend it. I really had a good time with it. I really liked the concept of it. And this is one where it could have easily gone bad. And they could have cheesed it up. But I think it has just the right amount of cheese, the right amount of CGI. I would recommend it. I think it's a fun time. So it's on Amazon streaming. Again, it's a Blumhouse, so definitely check it out if you have a chance. I really liked it. So next up, as I told you, we have a lot to talk about. We have Poppy Playtime twofold. So the first thing I want to talk about is the Story So Far videos that Mob Entertainment has been releasing. And I was waiting to talk about this whole thing because I had a feeling that a teaser trailer for Chapter 4 was coming, and I was right. So now, let's talk about the Story So Far videos and the teaser trailer. So, in the Story So Far for Chapter 1, just to kind of recap everything before we get to the teaser trailer. In Chapter 1, as a recap, we learned that the Playtime Co. staff had disappeared. We received a package with a videotape and a note saying that members of the team were still alive. The intruder, as the character we play as is called in the video, broke in to try to discover what happened to the staff. We took on Huggy Wuggy, and that's how we eventually got to Poppy in her glass case. And so in Chapter 2, Poppy led us to, like, Elliot Ludwig, who's, like, the big elusive creator of Playtime Co., his office. However, Poppy gets taken by Mommy Longlegs, and we had to beat, like, several of her little posse to get Poppy back. And then we also ran into Kissy Missy, who, instead of attacking us like Huggy Wuggy, which I feel so silly saying all of this, but, like, those who are playing are like, keep going, continue. And, you know, Kissy Missy actually helped us out. We eventually made it through all of the trials and tribulations we had to make it through that Mommy Longlegs gave to us. And if you remember, she gets put in that roller, and then her body, as the narrator says, what was left of her is his now, because there's that creepy mechanical, like, claw hand that's like a mechanical skeleton, comes in and drags her out. So, towards the end of the video, I would also like to say, I thought we'd been playing as a former employee the whole time, but it was throwing me off that he was just calling us an intruder. But at the end of this video, he does call us a former employee. So I was like, okay, just to recap, we are a former employee. Just a heads up. So then, at the end of Chapter 2, that's when we get Poppy back, and that's when Poppy wrecks the train that was supposed to be our way out, because she says that we're too valuable. So that's how Chapter 2 ends. So Chapter 3, which just came out earlier this year, it introduced us to Catnap and then Ollie, who is hopefully an ally. In Chapter 3, that's where we found, like, the orphanage in the basement. That's where we had to fight off all the nightmares that were kind of generated by Catnap's red smoke. We also, again, learned that Poppy and Kissy Missy are on our sides, and they are trying to right the wrong. We learned what the Hour of Joy was, which is where, you know, like, Huggy Wuggy and all of them unalived all of the Playtime Co. employees. And then Chapter 3 ends with Poppy and us, the character that we play as, being lowered down by Kissy Missy further down into Playtime Co. And Kissy Missy is attacked. Like, we hear her be attacked. And so this video ends with the narrator saying, and down they go like lambs to the slaughter, and laughing. And it's clear that the narrator's been watching from some sort of control room. And so I think that the narrator who is doing these recap videos is meant to be Elliot Ludwig. That's my interpretation. Also, I didn't know this story, it's set in 2005, which I just learned from these videos. I did not know that. I have been, I guess, sleeping on that info. So it's kind of cool to, like, establish a timeline as well, and just to get these little recap videos of, like, and that's what you missed on Glee, leading into Chapter 4. Mob Entertainment, I can't tell you how cool all of your marketing is for these games. Like, the analog horror series that you did, you know, like the Smiling Creature stuff, I love y'all's marketing. And having, like, these little recap videos with, like, a creepy narrator is so cool, because it's like those 70s and 80s movie trailers is the vibe that it gives off. And just keep it up, because this marketing is so cool. I just love y'all's marketing strategy. So now, let's get into the Chapter 4 teaser. So, in the teaser, a cute little Dog Day Smiling Critter plush begins walking around the warehouse, and you can just see, like, the remnants of all of his friends and the other plushes, right? And so then he gets attacked by what appears to be this lamb plush. And we can see as the camera pans out that, like, this thing has, like, attacked and basically unalived all of these plushes. And in my opinion, like, this Dog Day plush might have been, like, the last one. And it could have even been, like, the one that talks to us in the video, maybe, is the connection there. It also broke my heart a little bit, because this little plush is so cute, and I hated seeing it get attacked. But I don't believe we've seen this lamb plush before, and I went back and I rewatched the Smiling Critters cartoon, and I don't remember seeing it, so I think this may be also a new character alert, just a heads up. And so then the video ends, and we find out that Chapter 4 is coming in January. So just know I will definitely cover it. I love Poppy Playtime. We've talked about this, like, I don't like playing video games, but I love watching them be played, so we'll definitely talk about it. As the full trailer comes out, we'll talk about it, so just stay tuned, and in the meantime, subscribe to Mob Entertainment. Their marketing is, like, top-notch. So, love it. So next up, we have a new Angel Hair video. We have Disc 5, which is called Fail State. The video starts out with Jonah telling us that Gabby told him the game will lead him, but, like, he needs to be careful about how he chooses to follow the game and who he chooses to follow in the game. So Jonah puts a command in to talk to Crow, who tells him that the wizard left years ago. He then asks about the princess, but the Crow becomes agitated with Jonah and tells Jonah that he should be asking about himself instead. So Jonah inputs a command to ask about Jonah. He's like, ask about Jonah. And Hyrax appears and questions, like, what self is he talking about? So Jonah then says that Segan gave the game to him, so Jonah needs to stop acting like a guest, and before, you know, because it's clear that Jonah's in the game, right? I apologize. He says ask about self, not ask about Jonah. So then he, like, realizes, like, he's played this game, he has a character in the game, so he needs to ask for himself by name. And so when he inputs ask about Jonah, that character of Jonah that we've seen before pops up and says, like, well, guess who's finally taking some responsibility? And then this caricature of Jonah continues to kind of, like, belittle him and, you know, scold him for, like, cheating and taking shortcuts, and then proceeds to skip to, like, the end of the game. And so since we're at the end of the game, the princess appears, where she tells us that, like, by not completing the quest and, like, not getting all these points, that, like, we can't beat the game. And she tells us that, like, she thought we had come here to be a good friend, but we have nothing to show for it. And so then Jonah interrupts and says that, like, he's not doing any of this for points. And so Jonah inputs a command to ask about Segan. And so instead of the princess continuing the conversation, Hyrax pops up again. And he questions our motives, believing that Jonah only wants to know why he's in the game. And Jonah says that, like, he just wants to know how to help an old friend. Like, he doesn't really care about why he's in the game. He's doing this for Segan. So then Hyrax morphs into the Crow and tells us that Segan isn't our friend, and that Jonah only used him to get out of his own house, and that this led Segan to, like, desperately seek the approval of others. And then Jonah interrupts and he's like, this is not about me. And so then he inputs a command to ask about Cam, and the Crow morphs into the princess and asks if Jonah really thinks there is a Camiel in there. And then something clicks with Jonah. And Jonah says, "You've been here the whole time." And then the game begins to glitch. And Cam then says that Jonah's there to try to fix him and make Jonah and Segan feel better, and that Jonah's only using him, to which Jonah responds that he doesn't use his friends. Cam then begins to ask Jonah, like, why Jonah feels guilty about being around Gabby and Zag, and why he thinks they're too good for him, why he uses them for a reason, etc. And Jonah responds that he does use his friends, but, like, they use his help too, like, it's a reciprocal thing. And he says that, things may be different now, but they can still lean on each other because they're good friends. And then Jonah inputs a command to use the Rogue and the Paladin, so to bring Gabby and Zag back. And they ask what's going on when the game's end screen comes up. And then the princess appears to tell us that we've become a good friend. And so then Jonah reveals to us what he realized earlier, which is that Cam has not been hiding, but Cam has been in front of them this entire time. And that Cam was not the gesture. Cam is all the characters. That's why it was switching between characters. That's why all the characters seemed to know what was going on. All of the characters this entire time have been Cam. Cam's not been missing. And so that's what Jonah kind of realized, and that's why the game glitches when he asked about Camiel, because Camiel was there. And so Cam goes back into the character of the princess as Gabby and Zag try to talk to them. Cam begins to fumble their monologue, and Gabby finally reaches her breaking point as Zag's like, do you want to keep, like, gently, like, basically gently pushing Cam back. And so Gabby finally gets fed up and reaches across the screen as she and Zag are back in angel hair, and starts pulling Cam back over to their screen as he starts screaming and, like, cycling through all of the characters. And so I'm really excited for us to see, like, Cam in his true form. Sorry, it's Cam in their true form. I'm just really excited to see where this goes. I'm just really intrigued by everything. And I think that the next video might be the season or series finale. I saw something on the East Patches community tab that the final opportunity to have your name in the credits is coming up for the finale. So buckle up, everyone. I'll see you back here for the next one. And again, East Patch, love you guys. Love what you're doing. Love all of your videos. Can't wait to see how this ends. Either for good or for now. Either way, I'm sold. So the last thing we have up for today's special features is VHS Beyond. So we know I was not the biggest fan of VHS 85, but they've won me back with this one. I think that Jay Cheel's wraparound is one of the strongest of the franchise because it's more so just a continuation of the theme. It's not forced into coming across a certain way or tying in a certain way. I love Justin Martinez's Live and Let Dive segment. I think that's probably my favorite. And Justin Martinez actually worked with Radio Silence on the first VHS, which I think is really apparent by this short, because to me it's the most, like, original, like, the closest to the original VHSs. I loved Kristen and Justin Long's segment, and don't get mad at me, I don't know how it fits the theme, but I did love it. So, like, don't get mad, I loved it. But I'm like, is this really aliens? I was like, what did I miss? So if I missed something, tell me, because I can't figure out how it fits. I thought Kate Siegel's segment that she directed, Mike Flanagan wrote it, I thought their segment was really cool. I thought Jordan Downey and Virat Paul's segments were both really solid. We all know that my favorite is still VHS 94 of this new wave of VHS. But I think this one's super solid. And Shudder, if you're listening, I'd love to see, like, a 70s themed VHS next, or, like, maybe something that's centered around cryptids would be cool. Just to throw those ideas out there. But yeah, definitely check it out. It's streaming on Shudder. It came out Friday. I think it's solid. So next up we have subtitles, and we probably don't have a lot in subtitles this week. But first up, and for those who are not familiar, subtitles are just little pieces of pop culture news from around the internet that I enjoy. So first up, Rachel McAdams is allegedly in talks to star in Sam Raimi's new horror film, Send Help, which is exciting. Because I don't think she's done anything really horror or thriller since Red Eye, so that would be interesting. Anne Hathaway is not only set to star in Princess Diaries 3, but also the second Devil Wears Prada movie that is upcoming. Meryl Streep has also confirmed she will be returning. Freak Zone Games has announced a Rocky Horror Picture Show video game, which I think is super dope. It looks like it's going to be in very, like the Friday the 13th with, like, those kind of neon colors, 8-bitty looking, so I'm very excited. There's a live-action / CGI hybrid Rugrats movie in the works, from Jason Moore, who directed Pitch Perfect, which is wild, but I'm like, okay, pop off. The trailer for The Last of Us Season 2 is dropped. Color me excited, like Catherine O'Hara all day. The novelization of X has officially dropped on the A24 store, with Pearl to follow next month. And then unfortunately we are ending subtitles again with another RIP to Chris Christopherson. Rest in peace, sending good vibes to all of his loved ones and friends. Because the big thing is, for those who don't know, he was a big supporter of Sinead O'Connor after her SNL performance. And so, big props to him. So, I think that will do us for today's video. So, let's go ahead and wrap it up. First off, as always, please give us a follow on Instagram, just at bmovies channel. Like I said, that's where we post video drop updates. For the month of October, we will be posting there every single day because we'll be posting pieces, our YouTube video, Bite Size Sundays, and it's just at bmovies channel, same as our YouTube. Feel free to follow me on Instagram at Lisa_Frankenstein_. Feel free to follow Elliot, which is at reading.with.red. Be sure to subscribe if you're not subscribed. We're almost at 50 subscribers. Would love to get us there. Give us a like if you feel so inclined, and leave a comment if you're feeling frisky. I think that will absolutely do us for today's video. Again, so excited to be here during spooky season with all of you. And on that note, all that's left to do is fade to black.